Yes, sir.
Um, polish your crystal ball here for a minute and let me know what you're hearing about opportunities for pipers in the next 5 to 10 years. Do you see it moving up? Demand going to increase? Is it going to stay about where it is right now? What's your crystal ball say?
Well, I'm an optimist, and so you're usually going to hear me say optimistic things. But I think, given the energy revolution that's happening in this country right now, how could that not be huge for pipers? I mean, when you think about the cost of natural gas being a feedstock for chemical plants, ethylene plants, you know, it was about 2 years ago, the president of Total was at the Houston Chamber of Commerce and talking about, and in the question and answer session, they asked him, Total has traditionally been a heavy investor in Africa. Is that where it's going to be for the next 5 years? And he said, we are considering a sea change there. And we're going to move to another continent. And that continent is North America. Why? Because you've got some of the best shale deposits in the world here, and you're allowing fracking. You know, Sasol's got a big proposal right now, big plant in Louisiana. Why? Cheap natural gas. Natural gas is a feedstock for a lot of stuff, particularly in the chemicals industry. So, you know, I would think if we're producing a lot of energy here, we're going to be refining and making chemicals for a lot of energy here. That's got to be good for pipers. And when you listen to Laura talk about what's going on with natural gas, she's thinking, Hart Energy is, that the price for natural gas won't vary off of this $4 or $5 per million BTU for the next 40 years. That was their prediction, that there's so much gas there. And really, we haven't explored a lot of the U.S. yet. If you saw those pictures earlier, the reason there wasn't anything out in the West Coast, we haven't looked that hard out west.
That is a real issue about natural gas, is that if you don't look for oil, then you don't find natural gas. They're in a cavern, and the oil is heavier, and the gas is on top. And that's why we found so much natural gas around here.
I think there's been some, and y'all know this, real revolutions in drilling. And I think there's some real revolutions going on that we're not hearing about yet because it's very proprietary. And you know, that's got to be good for engineering and piping, I think. Steve? You know, when I put his picture up there, I was looking around, and I don't. I mean, I was keeping in touch with him up until about, I'd say 10 years ago. Then I lost touch of him.
You said you had a boy about 6 months ago.
Yeah, because at one time he had some health, but he must have gotten past it then. That's great news. I haven't. Well, Ed, I still see around a lot.
Let's get back to best practices. I had a lunch with one of the piping managers and asked him how he was, for another client, they were asking, how do you train people for offshore structural design? And he said, we don't have a formal training program. We go to the vendors and put people in their training classes, and they're the ones that take them over the deliverables, and they're the ones that take them over how to create bait structure for offshore structure.
Right.
And so, who is managing the training and the education of the workforce? Is it the vendors who are selling products, or is it the EPC companies or the owner-operators? Who's conveying this knowledge to the young and to the up-and-coming from these practices? How do they find out? How do they learn?
For offshore structural?
Well, no, not for offshore structural, but I'm thinking piping. We used to have the Kellogg school, we had the Florida school, and now, I mean, we have SPED efforts, but I mean, who's bringing these people up? Who's taking responsibility for doing this training? Is it the EPC?
I think it's on the job. I mean, no question, when you take a look at the outside, SPED's the first thing that comes to my mind. But when you talk about what I actually see when I was a piping manager, we didn't have a school, so to speak, at least in the last 15 years. What we would have was kids, frequently somebody that was the son of somebody or the daughter of somebody, that would come in and we'd teach them at lunch, on the job, on the side, after work, and would just kind of coach them through it. I know the way I got taught most of my stuff was by checkers, and it wasn't particularly pleasant. Yeah, it stuck. So, a lot of that happens now. You get taught by your checkers. But I had a change of heart over the years. I used to be, years and years ago, leery about bringing in family members. But after a number of years as a piping manager, I realized actually it was a really good thing to do. You could bring in the sons or the daughters, nieces and nephews, and then they had kind of like a built-in mentor that would look out for them, as long as you didn't put them in some kind of review situation, where they were. As long as you didn't do that, that actually worked quite well. So I think that's really how a lot of training's taking place right now, on the job by people you know. Yeah. No question that globalization is there and it's here to stay. I mean, that isn't going away. And just because we're having an energy revolution here and we're going to be building more here doesn't mean that we're still not going to be sending a lot of work over there. I think just because of the nature of the rates. I mean, I helped with Shaw open their Mumbai office. I hired Mumbai engineers just as recently as 2 or 3 years ago. And I was hiring fresh out of school for $4 to $6 an hour US. So, there's no question that when you've got that kind of delta in costs, and they're coming closer together, but they're not going to be that close together in our lifetime. As long as you have that kind of delta in costs, we're going to be shipping work overseas. That's inevitable. But there is space for us. Yeah, I think there's not an easy answer to this, but I think it's possible that with the amount of work that I expect to have happen in the U.S. over the next 10 or 20 years, that even though a large proportion of that work might go outside the U.S. and then come back in for construction, our work part will grow just because there'll be so much here. That might not be the answer that we want to hear, but that's the reality. Yeah, I don't think there's a way that's easily done to protect the workforce, so to speak. It's a competitive environment. And let's face it, anybody that's been involved with bids, our clients look at technical capabilities and they look at price.
Stand on the track where the train can run you over.
Yeah, I don't see it necessarily though as a bad thing. I think you could work as teams, work share across global boundaries, and I think there will be plenty of work for us here, and I think we'll grow in size, even though overseas will grow in size too. Yeah.
I teach designers in Malaysia, and I tell them that there's a bunch of people in China that are ready to take their job. And there's no safe haven anywhere for anybody, anytime. You just have to be the very best you can be at all times. And keep, positioning yourself for the next big thing, which right now is gas and FPSOs and all that stuff. And it's the role that SPED is trying to play in a way, is trying to bring in these hot topics so that you have a chance to maneuver, prepare. And that's who else is doing it? And that's the whole point. It's up to you to keep growing your way into the next big thing. Because right behind you, there's a guy who wants your job. There's a long line of people that want your job. Same in Malaysia, same in Taiwan, same in Japan, same in Europe. There's always a long line of people who want your job.
Yeah.
Okay? You just got to keep running. I don't have a good answer for government protection would not be the answer. It's the worst of all. Because it means you can coast, and then when the government eventually runs out of money, then you're out. You're totally out of money. So you just have to keep running. Sorry. Am I sounding too Republican here?
Well, you're going pretty deep for me. I'm up here talking private practices. I'm real comfortable in that zone. Yes, sir. We got something in the back?
We got time for one more question.
My question is, maybe touch base on it, is the world of oil. Is the oil coming to a peak? To Saudi Arabia, they're reaching their peak in the oil production, so they're going to perhaps tourism, Dubai and all that. So have we peaked in the oil worldwide? What's going to replace it? Is it going towards deep water exploration?
Every time I hear about peak oil, that's been a topic for decades and decades, actually. Next decade we're going to hit peak oil, and then demand out, and then they find a way to extract more of it from some other place. So I would want to make that prediction that we've hit some kind of peak supply point. I got a feeling they're going to find new ways to drill and new ways to extract. There was a little blurb in the New York Times a few months back. I don't know if I got it right because I heard it secondhand, but that actually, I showed you that picture of the shale, the fracking in North Dakota. Actually, there's a lot more, even lower than that down there, but it's under so much pressure, and because it's so deep, that it's actually solid. It's not gas or liquid. It's solid. And they're working on ways to frack that and get it out. So, you got to wonder, I don't think, underneath the earth, you go down 5 miles, you might as well be on the moon. A lot of people don't know what's down there. So, I think there's going to find new ways to generate more oil. Thanks.
Thank you, Wayne. With all the audience participation in that just shows it was a great presentation, and we appreciate it.